Start streaming. Okay, now I think we are working here. Okay, so I think I'm now streaming on Twitch and YouTube. I think this is all happening here, which I've only done once, and it's very confusing.
Okay, well, bear with me because I'm not modding yet.
Well, I'm just going to move forward.
You do that.
Okay, so now,
Yeah, what's up?
okay, docs, where's my... Okay. I think we're actually working here. All right, sorry for the slow start there. Oh, thanks, Otherglow. All right, so what I'm doing today is I'm going to do a tour of the studio. I had put up a video on Instagram a couple days ago where I kind of talk about stuff in the studio, and I talk about my 16-track analog machine over here, and it got a lot of views, and there were a lot of questions about the studio, and I kind of just blew by a lot of equipment. I wasn't really trying to show the equipment, but people were asking about stuff, so I thought today I would actually do a more detailed look at some of the equipment here, primarily the analog gear. So that's what I'm going to do today. So, sip of coffee, a sip of water, and I'm going to start with my analog MS 16-track multi-track recorder. Let's move over here. So this right here is my MS-16. You can back up just a little bit first. So I bought this in the 80s. And what this is how we would record records back then on tape. And I'll show the tape in a minute. It's 16 tracks, which meant I could do 8 individual parts, like, you know, drums, kick, snare, guitar, and bass, and then some vocals and keyboards on 16 tracks. And the way it worked is you had these tape heads here. So, yeah, come on in and show this right here. You can see the tape heads. The tape would move this way, back and forth across it, and the heads were divided up into 16 little strips. And they would record each instrument on a very small sliver of tape so that I could add more tracks. You had a record head. You had, this was the erase head. This was the record head. This was the playback head. Now, the first thing you would do before you wanted to record was clean the heads. So I'll show you how I did that. Now, I used to have some special, like, little pads for this stuff, but I don't have those anymore. So I'm just going to use these Q-tips, and you'd go through and clean off. Now, I did another stream on Instagram earlier today, so this is from that. So you can see this is the oxide that wears off when you're running the tape over it. So you got to clean that off before you do anything else. So I'm going to go through all the guides. Make sure they're clean. That's not too bad there. Let me check this one again. It's good. I'm going to clean the erase head. Yeah, you can see it's taken off some of the oxide that wears off from the tapes. You'd be amazed. Like, sometimes you get to the end of the day, and there'd be like all this stuff, this brown stuff from the tapes. Stuff would wear out. You know, the thing about analog tape is it did wear out. It wouldn't just last forever. And if you had any kind of roughness on any of your guides, it could actually really screw up your tape. This machine is old. I packed it up in like 2000 and put it in the corner of my studio, and I pulled it out last year and hauled it up here, and amazingly it turned on and still works. It does need a little adjustment. There's a couple things that need to be worked on, but it basically works and records and plays back. I don't know if anybody can say that about a computer that they had in the year 2000. Probably not. But this sucker is still going. Now, this was considered not necessarily a super professional piece of gear. It was considered prosumer. It cost me $12,000 in the 80s. And, you know, I was always a little embarrassed by it because I had friends that had like very expensive Studers and all that. But, you know, looking back on it now, you go, man, look at this thing. It's like, it's actually got some heavy duty engineering on it. Look at that. That is not, this is like metal and a lot of technology, like hard work and precision metal and all that went into this thing just for what was considered a cheap machine. Now, the next thing you would do is before you would record, you'd have to go under here and open this up, and you had something called aligning the tapes. So each track had a card here that was associated. Oh, let me get my mic down here. Hold on a sec. So each of the 16 tracks had a card on it associated with it, and on each card, these little white things here, you can stick a screwdriver in them and they'll spin. They're like little dials. And you would have to set up the machine using this right here. This was called a alignment tape, the MRL tape, Magnetic Reference Laboratory. And this came with pre-recorded tones on it that were recorded at a specific volume. It had like, I think like, it's like 60 hertz or something like that, a low tone, a mid-range tone, which is like, boop, and then a high tone, which is like really high, 10 kilohertz. And you would play those tones back and go through each track and make sure that those tones played at 0 up here on the meter. Here, show the meter here. So the tones would like, you'd have to go through and make sure that it was playing back each tone at 0, right? And then you would record tones onto some fresh tape and adjust these for like your record head, your playback head, frequency response, and you technically were supposed to do this every day. I didn't do it every day, but I did it pretty frequently. But it was a process you had to do, and you had to go through each one of these and adjust these before you recorded or before a mix session. Once you got that done, you get your tape. Let me grab a reel here. So this right here, this is the tape that I'm using on this machine. This is 1-inch analog tape. And the way it works is tape was basically like a strip of plastic, but on one side you had a coating of like metal oxide, like it's basically like the best way I could say it, almost be, oh, let me get my mic up here. So you had a strip of plastic, and then you had a layer of basically metal dust, or almost like rust dust on here. There's actually these medical particles on here, very small, and they kind of floated on here. And the tape machine would send a signal that would change the alignment and the arrangement of the metal particles that would make basically the sound and the sound waves. Here, let me put it on here and I'll show you. Get my mic set up here. All right. So, you put your tape on the machine. Whoops. All right, so as you can see, the tape is going across the heads here. And I'm rewinding now. Let me hit return to 0 right there. And there's like these little pathways on there for recording the audio. It would erase it on this head, record it on this head, and play it back here. Then you take your remote, you This is your remote, so you didn't have to be right next to the tape machine. Okay, you can go to the front camera now. And because the tape machines were kind of loud, you know, sometimes you'd put them in another room, or I had mine kind of back in a closet. And then you had your remote right here so that you could control it. Now, what I've got pulled up right now is a song called Live Fast, Die Young. It's something I'm doing with Slade, my buddy Slade, Yo at Slade on Instagram. I'm not sure if he's on YouTube. And what I've been doing on some of this stuff is actually taking drums and guitars, dropping them onto the tape, and then putting them back into Pro Tools or Ableton, which I've been using as well, and comparing the sounds, kind of seeing what I like. I'm actually working on a video about this that'll be coming out in a few days. So I'll just play you what I got here.
Tape Verge asks 15 IPS or 30.
Oh, okay.
Machine, but it needs work.
Yeah, I should have said, yes, this is 30 IPS, and it originally was made to run at 15, but I wanted the higher quality, so I had it modified to run at 30, which might be why I had to repair or replace the motors on it a couple times over the years. Oh, you have the same machine. Yeah, mine needs a little work. It's technically working. There's definitely something going on with the my reproduction head. I've got a tech coming out here to look at it. I bet you it's probably just the what do they call it, the azimuth on the head. There's a couple of odd things going on, but hey, it works good enough to play with, and I couldn't wait till everything's right to mess around with it, so I actually started recording some stuff on it. But the first thing I did that I'm working on for this video is this. Now, oops, people also often ask me, what did you like about analog? And there's some things I liked about it, some things I hated about it. What I liked about it is what they called tape compression. With tape, you could just slam the levels and it would never quite overload the way digital does. It would just compress the signal. Now I'm going to show you, Harper, go over and show the meters there. This is how I would record a lot of my signals. Look at the VU meters. I'm slamming that stuff because it would do this interesting thing on the tape that would just kind of compress it and just make it sound fat. And I'd redline it, of course. I would even do that sometimes on like an acoustic guitar or something like that, you know, just because I like that sound. What I didn't like about tape was tape hiss, the expense of the tape, and all the maintenance. All right, you can come on back. So, I mean, that's the basics of the machine. There's a lot more complexities on it. There's going to be a little more detail in the YouTube video that I'm going to put out in the next few days. But I just kind of wanted to show everybody that. No, I do not do 192K. I probably should. People kind of insist on it. I've done multiple projects in every resolution, and to be honest with you, there's a certain, like, I do 48, and then I get above that. I was like, yeah, I guess it sounds a little better, but no, I just do 48, and everything is going to go to 48K anyway when it goes to video. I don't know. I just got this feeling about converting things too much, you know? So if I'm at 48, that's where it's going to be, because, you know, I don't know many people that are converting to 16-bit 44.1 anymore. Everything seems to stay at 48 because we're all going to video and stuff like that. So that's my theory behind that. Now I'm going to move on to some other gear. Let's move over to my other analog pieces. So I got that machine. Let's do the tape machines first. I got the other machine I used a lot back then was this. This is my Tascam 32. It's a 2-track mix-down machine, only a left and right, and I mixed for years going to this machine. Now, it uses same thickness of tape as this machine here. It's using 1/4-inch tape. And this ran at 15 IPS. and was not considered at the time, like a super fancy tape machine, but it's what I could afford, and I did a lot of records on it to the point where I kind of wore it out. But here's the thing. I probably put this thing away sometime in the early 90s because I moved on to digital DAT machines that I could mix down onto. But here's the thing, man. I pulled this thing out last year, and it turned on, and it still works. It definitely needs a little care. I'm going to have the tech look at it, but it's playing back. I'm playing back old recordings from my old bands, and I don't know if you can say that about your computer that would last that long. My last computer lasted like 5 years. This thing I got in the 80s and did countless records on it, and it still works. Now, this next machine over here, this is a machine I've had longer than any other machine. This is a 4-track. This is a TAC 33, an A3340S with SimulSync. And these were buttons that would allow you to do overdub. So like if you recorded on track 1, you'd hit this button so it would play the music back on the record head, so it would play back at the same time as what you were recording. And, what you do is like I would record maybe the drum kit to one track. You take all the mics and put it on one track, bass on a track, and guitar. And then you take those 3 tracks and record them down to one track here, and you'd better get that mix right. And then you'd erase these because you had your rhythm section here. You could do like vocal, keyboard, maybe a background vocal or something like that. And I did that for years. I made a lot of recordings. I got this when I was 15 years old. I was in high school. It cost me $800. I had to get a bank loan for it because my parents weren't about to just give me $800 for a tape machine. They co-signed a loan, but I had to make all the payments. But here's another thing. I got this in the 70s, and it was used when I got it. And here's a crazy thing. When I pulled it out here last year, and I pulled it out from other studio, it had been sitting on a shelf for decades. It turned on. It works. I can play my old recordings. I think VU meter 3 doesn't work sometimes. If I jiggle it or knock on it, it works. It's actually, you can see it's not even pointing at the bottom here. But basically, it works. And it weighs a ton. But, hey, man, I'm going to be able to pull out some of these old recordings that I did.
Soundbites mentions that DAT was short-lived in film, TV, and sound, and came after the Nagra tape machines.
Yeah, DATs didn't last long. And I'm going to show you my DAT machine in a minute.
He says, and then all of a sudden hard drives came around and his dad retired.
Now, this here is a Yamaha Rev 7 digital reverb, and this was what we used back before plugins and computers, and it was more advanced than like a spring reverb, some of the other stuff. This was what I would consider probably my first professional piece of gear because it had balanced line inputs at +4, and I bought that at the same time as I got I went out of order here. I was going to show something else. But I bought this at the same time as some other gear. But this was in the 80s. And I actually have a video on my YouTube channel where I compare reverbs, outboard reverbs to my plugins. And this one, in my opinion, this one beat all the plugins. It's a little funky sounding, but it's amazing to me. I love this thing. And I'm going to get it patched up to the patch bay here soon. Now, I'm going to come back over to here because people were asking about this mixer. Now, this mixer here, I don't use this mixer for recording. This only gets used for the streams so that I can have like my DAW coming in here, a couple microphones. I've also got it set up that if I'm just wanting to listen to music off the 16 track, it also comes in here just for monitoring purposes. I've done some live recordings here and there where in a pinch I didn't have enough mic pre's. So I would maybe use a couple channels for mic pre's, but this is mainly for monitoring. Next on over here, I've got a DBX 160X compressor. That's down here. I'm only using... Yeah, hold on a sec. I only use this compressor for the stream. You can see, check. You can see my voice on there. It's the other microphone. But I use this for the stream. Below that, I've got a DBX de-esser. It's got two 902 de-essers in it. They're 500 series that are set sideways. And this thing's vintage. I bought it used like probably back in the 90s, but I still use this thing. It sounds amazing. It's really great to record the vocals with the de-esser on it, even though the plugins are great. Sometimes I just like to hit it a little bit at the beginning. And then Next, here's a piece of gear. I'm going to show. Actually, get it from this angle, Harper. Over here. This is a Rockman sustainer. Now, this was built, I think, in the 80s. It was made by Tom Schultz from Boston, and it's basically like an amp simulator. It had a couple distortion sounds on it and clean sounds on it. The distortion sounds kind of suck, but the clean sounds are amazing. It's got a compressor built into it, and I use this all the time. I bought it in a pawn shop in the late 90s. I brought it home. I didn't like it. I stuck it up on a shelf for like 20 years, and then a few years ago I pulled it down. I was like, man, this thing sounds good. So I kind of keep it here on the desktop because I just really like the way it makes my clean guitar sound. And then I plug that in. The output of that goes into... Oops. Okay, right here I've got a Summit DI. So the Rockman Sustainer goes into the Summit DI, and then that goes into my DAW. And the cool thing that's cool about this is it's got this drive function on it, so I can hit the tubes harder and overload it a little bit, which kind of like crunches it up a little bit. Now below that, I've got two compressors. I don't know how well you can see them. I use them mainly for the stream. I think, check. Yeah, this mic is on that one. You can see the meter. Check. Yeah, there it is. These are called RNC's 1773s. They are really nice compressors. That's what the RNC stands for. They're really cheap, but they're really cool sounding. Now, they're unbalanced. They're -10 signals, but I still like them if you're not running the cables too long. I've used these on drums. I've used them for a lot of different things. You can get a really smooth compression on it, but you can get these crazy, savage, over-the-top compression sounds with it, and I really like using these things. But I bought them because there was a certain point where my business was growing, and I just needed more compressors, so I bought these. They were like $200 each, and it helped fill out my gear list. Above that, I've got this Universal Audio 1073 Twinfinity. The thing that's cool about this pre is that it's got a whole transistor type circuitry. If you turn the knob to the right, it goes to tube, and then you can blend like the clean, transistor type sound with tube. I usually just kind of keep it set in the middle. I use this for bass. I've used it for banjo. I've used it for different drums. It's pretty cool. And then over here, are there any questions I need to answer?
Not questions, a lot of commentary.
Okay, cool. I've got an Apogee Rosetta 8-channel A to D and D to A converter. This is what I go through most of the time going into my DAW. I'm using a Apollo Quad. This is my master clock. The master clock just controls this interface and my Universal Audio interface so that the word clock is the same, and I can change the sample rate and stuff on that there. And then let's pop over to the Apollo right here. So this is like, I guess, the main DAW right here. Everybody's familiar with these units, the Apollos. So I've got this one here as well, and it's light piped to the Rosetta. And then below that, I've got 3 of my favorite compressors. These are the Empirical Lab Distressors. And if you can ever get your hands on one of these, I just feel like these are some of the most versatile, best-sounding compressors. You can make them sound like a vintage LA2A or something like that. You can also make it sound very savage. This is like right here, my standard vocal setting right here. I was doing some vocals, and then here I was doing some acoustic guitar last night and this morning. This one here, I wasn't necessarily using for anything, but I just put on a bunch of lights because it looks cool. I like the blue light for the Nuke setting, even though I never use Nuke, but I really like the way that blue looks there. Then below that, I've got 2 Avalon VT737s, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. These are mic pre's, EQs, and compressors. Now, I never use the compressors on these things. I think they're terrible sounding, but I do use the EQ and the mic pre, of course. These, a lot of people are very critical of these things. They're like, they're boring, and It's like, look, man, I did a lot of big rap records, huge hit rap records. and I use these for vocals all the time. These were my primary vocal pre's. They're very popular in Atlanta. And I also like these for bass guitar. I plug the bass guitar right in the front, put it to instrument, and I just slam the needle, and it just sounds amazing. I really, really like these for bass. Below that, I've got a Focusrite ISA 110. Now, I know that Focusrite, these things kind of are not considered cool anymore because they have these other versions called, I think, ISA 110s, where there's like 4 of them in a rack, and they're kind of crappy, lower quality mic pre's. But this is different. This is one of the first that came out. This is an original version. This is like on the level of like a fucking Neve or something like that. I got this in the 90s. It's a mic pre with an EQ. Sounds very, very sweet. I really like this thing a lot. If you can ever get one of these older original ones, I think this is like literally, oh yeah, it's a limited edition. Look at that. Limited edition. So this one's special. Below that, I've got a Chandler Limited Germanium mic pre. And the circuitry of this thing is designed to sound like, I believe, the mixer at Abbey Road Studios in London where the Beatles recorded. This is like an old school sounding mic pre. A lot of people that are into like rock and roll and indie rock like to use these things. It's got a very particular sound. It's got this thing here called feedback. You just put it up and it makes everything kind of fuzzier. It's got a button called thick. I don't know why it's not pushed in. I almost always leave it pushed in. But it's just got a nice warm sound. I use it on bass guitar. I've used it on female vocals sometimes. It actually pairs up really good with my Neumann M149 microphone because that thing can be just a little too clear on the top end. Below that, I've got my patch bays. There's a video that I just put out on Instagram that's gotten a lot of attention, and it's kind of why I'm doing the stream today. But I kind of featured these patch bays. The patch bay at the top and the one on the bottom, these are really old patch bays that somebody gave me. These things are at least 30 years old. They're solid freaking metal. They're really great. You should go to my Instagram and look at my latest reel on there. It kind of talks about these a little bit more, and I'll probably do more videos about them. But I've got basically everything in my studio patched in here. I've got like all my outboard gear. My 16 track is here. I've got my vocal booth coming in here. My amp room with all my guitar amps, and I'm not going to show that today because it's a mess back there, but this is like a little box that I made. But these modules here, like these parts here, these come from a Neve patch bay. I took them out because you can pull the parts out. My friend Paul Diaz at Tree Sound gave me some Neve patch bays that were probably built in the 60s or 70s, and he found it at a dumpster, and I cleaned them up, and they work great. They're built like tanks. So I took some of the modules out and stuck them on the box, and this goes into my amp room. So I've got 7 mic lines in the amp room for miking amps, and then I can patch it into anything. Next, I've got, let's move over to, any questions or anything? No. Okay.
People just chatting about stuff.
All right, let's move on. I got all sorts of junk here. So, of course, I've got my skulls. We've got skulls. We've got a shark tooth. Got to have a shark tooth. Got a couple shark tooths. I actually found these. Now, I've got an arrowhead. I did not find the arrowhead. I bought this in a store. I hope someday to find an arrowhead. But there's all sorts of cool things. There's all sorts of weird. Oh, that shouldn't be showing that. Oh, yeah. Got this. This is like a little mini guitar amp. They used to make these to look like cigarette packs, but they quit doing it like that. But they still make them in plain white boxes. This is one of the originals. It runs off a 9-volt battery, and you plug your guitar in, and it sounds amazing. I actually use these on records sometimes. Now, underneath here, I've just got all sorts of weird stuff. This, and I'm going to actually at some point use this in a video. This is a remake of the Roland Tiro 808. Nothing like crazy special, but it sounds pretty cool. But I'm going to be doing some videos, maybe doing some cover songs and using that. I keep saying I've had it for a year, and I still got to get around to that. What else do I have down here? I've got a Big Muff. I don't know how many of you guys know about a Big Muff. This is like a distortion box, but it's just a weird distortion box. Now, I looked into the history of these things. I didn't realize it was so, kind of controversial. Like, apparently, if you look at the bottom there, it says made in New York City, USA. apparently some versions that were made in Russia that don't have that on there. And then if you really look into it, like they'll talk about like the color of the lettering there and what year it was made and all that. All I know is this thing sounds amazing. And actually the track that I was playing earlier that I did with Slade, this is what I use on bass. He like really likes this sound, so I've been using this on bass and just distorting the hell out of the bass. Just runs off a 9-volt battery. I lost the door, and you can see there's some tape in there. This thing broke a couple times during stream, so I was actually fixing it during a stream. But that's one of my main tools right there. Now, I recently did a video, I don't know if any of y'all saw, about wah-wah pedals. So I've got this Morley wah-wah pedal here. This is a Bad Horsey 2. I've also got a, classic Crybaby wah-wah. This is the Jimi Hendrix version. But here's what's funny. Earlier today, I was streaming on Instagram, and I reached back here, and I pulled this out, and for the life of me, I have no idea where this Morley wah-wah came from. It says classic. I must have put it on the shelf, but I don't remember seeing this. But now I'm going to have to do, I guess, another wah-wah video. But this is another Morley wah-wah. It says classic. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that. I've also got a really...
tubes from Ukraine and Georgia and Western Electric, he thinks, came back to the U.S. to make tubes here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of the... Well, for a while, you could only get tubes from like, those Russian tubes. It's funny, like, how Russia's, like, known, and Ukraine and all that, and I forget the other country they would make tubes. This is an Overlord distortion pedal. It's made by Dean Markley, which I'm almost embarrassed to say Dean Markley because I always thought Dean Markley was kind of like goofy. But, they're like, oh, Dean Markley. It's a little dusty. Funny thing is, I actually like the sound of this thing. I'll probably have it in a video somewhere. Once again, I have no idea where this came from. I suspect it might have belonged to Jake Arnold, who's an artist I worked with. He was in a band called Grout. I asked him. He said it's not his, but it seems like something he would have owned. But over here, now this is one of my special ones here. This is a DOD flanger, probably built in the 70s, maybe the 80s. I got this from Chick Cusack, who used to run Atlanta Pro Audio, which was the store in Atlanta back when people went to stores, where most of the studio professionals would buy their gear. And I walked in one day, and he's like, hey, Billy, you want a flanger? And I was like, hell yeah. Now this thing, I think this sounds better than most plugins out there. It's just mono. It's a little noisy, but I love running my guitar through here. Running the bass guitar through here is amazing if you just barely have the mix on. Sounds really cool. This is really special. I love this thing. I've also got I got this. This belongs to Jim Botsford from Tokyo Teens, who's in a lot of my videos and I'm in a band with. This is a Qtron. It's like a it's like an auto wall envelope filter thing. This thing's I haven't really mastered it. I'll get a sound on it, never know how I got it, so I can never recreate it, so I got to write it all down. This thing's pretty cool, but this here is like a baby version of that. This is called Bassballs. Funny thing is I never run my bass through it. I'll run my guitar through it, or I'll run a keyboard through this thing. I like this a lot. This is an old DBX compressor, a single knob compressor. When I first started, the first time I went out on the road, it was actually as a sound man for a band. I did that for a few months before I got in a band as a guitar player. And it's just this compressor. This isn't the exact one I was using, but it was similar to this. But basically, you just had one knob. You just moved it this way for more compression. That was it. And, I need to get this thing hooked up to my rig so I can use it on something. And then let's see, what else do I have down here? Oh, I'm sure what everybody knows what this is. The Pod, one of the original amp simulators out there. Once again, a lot of people made fun of these things. But I tell you what, I really like some of the mid-rangey sounds on here. If I would do something on an amp, I would double it with this and pan them apart, and it was just such a huge sound. I've actually got two of these. I've got this one, and then I've got this one. I think this is the earlier version. I'm not sure what all that is on top of it. Did somebody shoot a shotgun at it? I don't know what the hell's all over it. But anyway, and then I've got, of course, I had a video about this recently. This is my Russian accordion. This is called I thought it was called what was I calling it? I was calling it the wrong thing.
Calling it a Bion.
I was calling it a Bion, but it's actually a Garmushka or a Garmin,
Yeah.
and it's a limited key. This thing only plays. This is like a baby one. Some of them are really big. This only plays in the key of, I think, is A major. So in the video, I actually had to play it in the wrong key and then tune it in Ableton, pitch it up, they're down 3/2 steps. But dude, I love this thing. This thing sounds really cool. I'm not an expert at playing it. I usually don't do anything with this side because I can't ever find my way around, but I can usually work out a melody on here and I'll use it on a song. Let's see. Let's move on. Oh, in the last stream, I didn't even talk about this guitar. This is a Paul Reed Smith guitar. Now, this guitar actually belonged to Danny Boone from Rehab. And I was working with a band. I don't know if y'all familiar with the band Rehab. I've done a few projects with them. I was in the studio with Danny working on something, and I had like a little Apogee 2-channel interface for your laptop. And it was just sitting there, and Danny's like, boy, I really wish I had one of those. I was like, oh, yeah. He's like, I've got a Paul Reed Smith guitar. I'll trade for it. Anybody in the band's like, don't do it. That interface is only worth a few $100. That guitar's like, what? And he's like, I don't give a shit. I was like, you serious? He's like, yeah. It's like, we shook hands on it, and I was going down to Florida for a film project. He lives down near Macon, so I met him at a convenience store alongside the highway, and I handed him the Apogee 2-channel interface, and he gave me this guitar. That was the trade. Fun thing is I don't actually play this thing that much. I don't know why. I probably should. It's a pretty cool guitar. I just keep forgetting it's over here. So now that I'm looking at it again, I'll probably use this on a song. Next. Oh, don't say anything, Crystal. You know how I'm banging stuff up. Okay. Then, over here, I got so much junk. I'm probably missing half of the stuff. Okay, so I like playing pedal steel. I'm not a pedal steel guitar player, but I really like this I use it on all sorts of stuff, not just, country type stuff, but I actually use it with an EBow and put a lot of effects on it. But basically, the way this works is you sit it on your lap, and you've got like a metal bar. It's like a slide guitar. You slide it up and down. This is just a cheap one that Kit bought for me for Christmas a few years ago. I really like this one a lot. Does the job. This one here belongs to my buddy Rick Austin, who I was with bands, in bands with years ago. This is a Gibson student model version of a lap steel. This thing I think dates back to the 60s or 50s. It's cool. It's a little bit thinner sound, but it's definitely got a very lonesome sound to it. I've used that on quite a few records. This right here, this is this is the first guitar. Well, this isn't actually my first guitar. My first guitar was terrible. I wouldn't even talk about it. But this is the first guitar I ever was a real guitar. It's a Yamaha Classic. My mom bought for me for my birthday, probably for like $80 or something like that. It's what I started learning on. It's got certain people were allowed to sign it. I stopped it at a certain point, but there's signatures on here. And on the back, there's actually, I think I was really high. I wrote the lyrics to a song on the back. You can see Dr. Ozone signed it down there in the middle. I don't remember who Dr. Ozone was, but apparently he has a very large signature. But actually, I got this in the 70s. I still use this on recordings all the time. It's nothing fancy, but you know what? It sounds good. Stays in tune well. It's a Yamaha. I love this thing.
Didn't you smash your first guitar at a gig?
I had a guitar that I smashed at a gig, but it wasn't like anything special. I found a cheap guitar, and I just smashed it so I'd have something to smash. Now, over here, I've got... This is my Heritage mandolin. Now, Heritage, let me turn on the light here. So, Heritage, the company that made this, the story behind Heritage is Gibson guitars used to be based in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they moved they were bought out by somebody and they moved somewhere else. When they moved, a bunch of the guys that had been working at the factory bought the buildings and bought the machinery and started a company called Heritage and started building their own guitars. So in a way, these are more Gibson than modern day Gibsons, using all the original equipment. My mom bought this for me. I was saying earlier, my parents wouldn't give me money to buy expensive things. But when I got older and I was already making a living in music and doing pretty well, she actually spent $800 and bought this for me. When I could have bought it myself, but I think she wanted to do something nice for me. She bought this for me for my birthday. It's worth a lot more money now, but I really love this thing. I've used this on a ton of recordings. It's sweet, and I like it because it's got like this wooden pick guard on it. I've never really seen that before. And then over here, Kit, I'm going to lean over you here. Right here, I've got this is a Puerto Rican instrument called I always say this one, cuatro.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, yeah. I can't use this anymore because if you look carefully, you see how the body, it's cheap. It's something my mom bought for me at like a tourist shop in Puerto Rico. So I can't really tune it. The bridge is like the body's caving in because it was cheap. But this thing's amazing sounding. It's got 10 strings on it. The best way I could describe it, it's kind of like a bass mandolin, but different. It's got this mystic, cool sound to it. I'm thinking about seeing if I can figure out how to fix it myself for a YouTube video. Chances are I'll probably destroy it, but I'm figuring like I could get it repaired, but I could just buy a good one for less money than it would probably cost to repair it. So, but I may go through the trouble of trying to fix it. But I love this thing. I used this on so many recordings, and then it's a few months ago I came down and it was doing that. And I was like, but I leave it in here just because I love it. Next, now this has got a little bit of history to it. This is an odd-looking guitar. Now, I don't know if many of you are familiar with this type of guitar. So my buddy Zach Hooper, who I've worked with for years, he was in a band called Cloud 10, and we're working on some new songs. We had met, and he said, hey, man, I want you to look at this guitar. You should try it out. And he pulls it out of the case, and I look at it, and I'm like, what the hell kind of guitar is that? Like a kid's guitar? Like, look how small the neck is. There's only 4 strings on it. What a goofy-ass guitar. But, yeah, I'll take it home. So I didn't really know what this was. And then I was mixing an album for a bluegrass group called the Never Come Down Band. And in the Pro Tools sessions, there were some tracks that said tenor guitar. And I didn't know what that meant. So I hit up the guitar player. I had not met them at the time. I just called him on the phone. And he explains to me that a tenor guitar is a 4-string guitar with a small neck that people used to play a lot of banjo, and guitar was becoming more popular, and they wanted to convince banjo players to move over guitar. So they made these guitars to get banjo players to feel comfortable playing guitar, and they would tune them like a banjo. I tune this more like a mandolin. But when he's explaining to me, he's like, oh, yeah, it's got 4 strings and a small neck. I'm like, wait, does it look goofy? Has it got this weird? He's like, yeah, this is a tenor guitar. This is a collector's item. This was built a long time ago. I forget the year. There's some paperwork on it. Now, what's interesting is the pickup that's in here didn't originally come with the guitar. It's actually, the pickup in itself is a collector's item. And there's documentation on all this stuff in the case. I can't remember now. But interesting thing about that pickup is you plug it in, it sounds like an electric guitar. Now, I actually made a video. I made 2 videos about this guitar. I made one video about trying to make a video about a tenor guitar. And it kind of turned into a disaster. So I think it's called...
I had a plan, but it went sideways. It's linked in the chat.
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's a video called I Had a Plan, but it went sideways. Then I spent... this is why I'm behind on so many projects. So I got this and I fell in love with it. I spent 2 weeks just playing this guitar instead of doing work. And I ended up writing a song, and I made a video where I made the whole song only using this guitar in my hands. That's it. That song is called Entropy. It's on Spotify, and there's also a video on my YouTube channel called Entropy, and it's just this guitar. And most of it's with a mic, some of it's with a pickup. I use the EBO on it, and you should check it out. It was just, I just became obsessed, and I made those videos, and I made the song, and I recorded it. And it's for my album that's coming up. And then I had to call my clients and say, yeah, your mix is coming along. That's why I'm usually late on things, because I get sidetracked. Now, over here, this Taylor guitar does not belong to me. This belongs to Zach Hooper, the same guy that owns this. He just left this here on the last session. I don't know why he forgot and left it here. And then he hit me up and he was wondering where his guitar was. And I was like, God, I don't know. No, I'm only kidding. But I used it, and it was a good thing he left it here because my Gibson acoustic, recently the bridge pulled up, and I got to get it repaired, and I needed to record some acoustic guitar. So you see, I was working on this last night, and I'll probably do some more tonight, but this is a sweet baby. This is my bass guitar. This is a Fender Precision bass, but it's not an ordinary Precision. It is a custom Precision. It's called a hot-rodded, I can't remember the exact title. It's something like Hot Rodded American Precision Bass. It's got passive EQ. One of these knobs got messed up when I was going to New York, so I had to replace this knob, and I just put this thing on it. But this thing is like it weighs like a heavy log. It's heavy as crap, but sounds amazing. It's a long scale bass. Love this thing. I use it all the time. Over here, I've got a rack of a bunch of old gear. Now, to be honest with you, some of the stuff just sits here because I like looking at the lights, and it's not even usable anymore. For instance, this on top was part of one of my original big time Pro Tool rigs that I spent like 12 grand on in the early 2000s. This was like the master clock, but it wouldn't even hook up to anything now. It needs these different connectors and stuff. I mean, it might. I don't know. This here is a CAD stereo compressor. It's actually pretty cool, but I've got enough compressors. Maybe I'll pull it out and use it on something. Below that, this is a BBE Sonic Maximizer. What it would do would enhance low end. I loved running my bass through this thing, and then it quit working at some point. But it's basically like, it's like those plugins. Like there's a Waves plugin, which I can never remember the name of. It's like the one everybody uses, like to enhance low end or add like subharmonics to a low end on it. I like this thing a lot. I wish I could get it working again. Below that, this is the DBX 1066 compressor. This is literally the worst compressor I've ever heard in my life. And it pissed me off because I bought two of these things. I spent a lot of money on them. I brought them back, and it took me months for me to admit to myself that they sounded terrible. I hate the sound of these things, but it sure got a lot of pretty lights on it. So I figured, okay. Below that, I've got, what are these PreSonus monitor sense stations? It's just sitting there. I don't really use it for much. Below that, I've got a Drummer stereo de-esser. This is actually a really nice de-esser. I don't really use it anymore. I had this because at the Zone, I used to have two rooms running. I had my main room, and then I had an engineer doing vocal sessions, so we needed another de-esser. I don't really do that kind of stuff anymore, so it just sits there. Maybe I'll pull it out for something. I don't sell gear. Below that is a Behringer headphone amp. I keep this in the studio here, the control room, because I actually do a lot of work in the control room and like recording. So if I've got clients or people hanging out and I need to do acoustic guitar or vocals, I can get everybody hooked up with headphones and we can all sit around. Now below that, this is more obsolete gear. This is a Glyph hard drive. This is back in the days, like late 90s, early 2000s. This right here, the hard drives were like this. Now this is can't see the size on it. It's probably 1 terabyte. When I got my first 1 terabyte drive, you would put it in something like this. It cost me $1,000 for a 1 terabyte drive. But this way you could switch them out. You would this would hook up. You'd record onto this, and then you would back up onto these things called AIT tapes. This is an AIT tape. This is actually something I probably need to get this to Little John. I don't even know if I could get anything off of here because this couldn't even hook up to my computer now. If I could find an old computer, I could hook it up and had special software. But you would take your AIT tape, and because hard drives are so expensive, you'd back up to these, another obsolete technology. So there's some Little John stuff on here. You'd put it in here, you'd stick it in, and then the software would see what you'd already backed up, but only back up the new stuff. And then, that's the way you could but the thing is, between every session, I'd have to run these tapes because I only had one 1 gigabyte. Did I say terabyte or gigabyte? It was my first 1 gigabyte drive that cost $1,000. And then below that, I got another patch bay here. This is using the same modules as the patch bays on the other side of the room, but I did this in a box. This actually goes up to my living room where I've got cathedral ceilings, and right now I've got 14 mic lines run up there. I'm going to do 2 more when Darren Stanley and Ashley Stewart come in to record with their amazing group of musicians. But I'll put drums up there. I would show that room, but
Ansley, not Ashley, sorry.
Oh, Ansley Stewart. I would show my room where I record drums, but it's a terrible mess right now because we're doing some cleanup up there. But I can run the drum mics down here. The reason it's on this side of the room is because my whole studio was set up differently when I put this in, and I didn't want to try to run it over there, so I just run a nice, balanced snake across to the patch bay when I'm doing drums. Onward, over here, I've got my Bill Lawrence electric guitar. I got this in the 80s. This is kind of a unique guitar. Bill Lawrence was known for making pickups back in the day. The one at the bottom is actually a Mullinax pickup made by a guy here in Atlanta with the last name Mullinax. He lives, I think, in Lawrenceville, Georgia. He custom made that pickup for me because I wanted something different. What's interesting about this guitar is that these are actually double coil pickups. They're stacked double coils. You can flip a switch so you can get like a Fender sound and then flip it to double coil and it gets thicker. It's not quite a Les Paul, but definitely gets thicker. This is my main guitar. I love this thing. Then over here, I've got a little more obsolete gear. This is a DBX noise reduction system, a 2-channel system. I use this for mix downs. So the way it would work is you'd send your left and right signal on your mix down through this unit. It would encode it with this thing called companding or something like that. Then it would record that to tape, and then it would come back out and analyze it, and it would come out clean with less tape hiss because you're trying to get rid of the tape hiss. It's an actually interesting unit. If you recorded stuff through it and then played it back without reconverting it, it sounded crazy, and it was an effect you could actually use. Next down the list, I've got a Delta Lab Effectron. This was given to me by Mike Gray, bass player, was in a group called Grout, a different Grout that I worked with. Unfortunately, this doesn't work anymore. It's a classic. It just stopped working at some point. I wish I could get it working. I got to get to somebody at some point, but I really like this thing. Below that is a Roland digital delay, an SDE 2000. I got this in the 80s. It did, at the time, this was amazing. Like, oh man, this thing will go up to 668 milliseconds of delay. That's really long. This thing sounds really, really cool. I've actually got a YouTube video about it where I put it on some drums. I like to pull this thing out once in a while. Below that, I've got another DBX compressor. I don't really use this that much. This was given to me. Oh, look, if I turn it like this, I get those red lights. Look at that. This was given to me by Sean Spencer from the Greenwood Rye Band. I think this was part of a PA system, and he wasn't using it, so I stuck it in here. I've used it a couple times. Keep it in the rack. I like the lights. Below that, I've got an Alesis Quadriverb. Now, I had like 3 of these things. And this was a digital reverb, digital delay, chorus, pitch thing. You could run your guitar through it, multi-effects processor. Once again, it was one of those things people made fun of. It's like, oh, it's just an Alesis. But man, I'll tell you, man, I've compared this to modern-day plugins, and I still think this stuff sounds better. Below that, this was even more of a joke, an Alesis MIDI-Verb 2. This was a cheap digital reverb. There was you couldn't really tweak any of the sounds. It was basically like, reverb 1 was small, reverb 2 would get bigger, the size would basically get bigger, and then you'd get into gates and bigger rooms. But the thing about it is, I pulled this sucker out last year, maybe 2 years ago. I made a video where I compared it to the modern-day plugins. I'm telling you, this sucker still beats some of the more expensive plugins today. I don't know why. I don't get it. But these old units, they sound really, really good. This is another old DigiDesign interface for Pro Tools. It's a 20-bit unit because originally we started recording in 16-bit, and everybody got excited and like, oh my God, there's a 20-bit unit. And I went out and bought this and probably was relevant for like 6 months, and then they came out with 24-bit. Below that, I've got an Alesis D4 sound drum module. This was back in the days if you wanted to use artificial drums. You could have triggers on your drums and trigger it from here, or you could plug this up to your keyboard with MIDI and play a drum kit, but it came off this unit. I ended up sampling all the drum sounds on here, and to this day, I still use some of the drum sounds on here. They're really, really good. Some great snares. Now, below that is my DAT machine. This is a Fostex DAT machine. I was saying that I was mixing down to analog reel-to-reel 2-track, and then at some point, these came out. This was a unit where you could, record digitally to tape, and the tapes look like this. They look basically like mini VHS tapes, and it was a good way to, cheaply get into digital mixdowns. And this is actually, oh my God, this is 98. So this is from a group called World Soul. I don't know if George is watching now, but hopefully he'll see this. This was done in 1998. I loved World Soul. They're such a cool band. I should probably like transfer this to CD and give it to him because I don't know if he has any copies anymore. But yeah, this is what I mixed down to for years up until we really got into Pro Tools and we would bounce down. And under that, I've got a spring reverb. So in case any of you don't know, back before digital reverbs, the only way you could get reverb was through a spring reverb, kind of like what you'd have in a guitar amp, or like plate reverb, which is like a big piece of metal, or like an empty room with speakers and microphones in it. This is a mono spring reverb, and I got it in the 80s. It was used at the time. I really hated this thing, and I was so eager to get into a good digital reverb. That's when I got the Yamaha. But like I said, I have a video where I compare these old reverbs to plugins. I pulled this one out, and it's actually really cool, and a lot of the people who watch the videos liked this best, which I thought was kind of interesting. Below that, I've just got some older patch bays. I don't really use these anymore. And then the last part of my partial studio tour here is some more instruments. This is a Yamaha Junior acoustic guitar. It's a FG Junior. I bought this for one of my boys when he was a little kid. He wanted to play guitar. He didn't really follow through with it, but it's actually a cool sounding little guitar. And I was actually recording with this morning, and last night I was doubling the Taylor guitar. And, you know, the other acoustic guitars are really pretty sounding, but I wanted something kind of punchy, so I just doubled it with this and panned them apart. There's something about using small acoustic guitars I really like, so I use that a lot. This is a Fender Telecaster made in Korea. Now, what's interesting about this is, you know, whenever you see like Fender or something like that, and it's like not made in the USA, it's made in another country, it's like they're cheaper models. But here's what's interesting about this thing. It's like a through neck, like the neck and the body are kind of all together. It's not bolted on. And the other funny thing is, like, this just showed up in my studio. I have no idea where this came from. One day I was like, oh, what's that guitar there? And there was a guy working at the studio, had been there for years. He's like, dude, that guitar's always been up on the wall there, hanging on the wall. And one of these guitar racks is like, damn, I love the way this thing plays. Now, with Fender guitars, if you type in the serial number into their website, it'll tell you everything you need to know about the guitar. I can do that on my Fender bass, but you can't find this guitar on their database. And I looked it up, and it turns out when Fender started contracting this factory in Korea to make these guitars, they actually did a really good job. So much so that people started buying these over the American guitars. So
Jake says he'll claim it as lost property.
Yeah, right. No, you ain't claiming this thing, man. But they stopped making this. What I read is they stopped making it because it was competing with the American guitars, and you can't actually look up the serial numbers of the Korean guitars on the Fender website. I couldn't find this one. I don't know if it's still that way, but this is like a mystery guitar. It's the guitar with no home, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I actually like that one a lot. I want to get better pickups for it, but it's badass. Now here is another Heritage guitar, the company that, you know, bought the old Gibson factory machines. This is a Heritage Les Paul version. It weighs a ton, sounds like a Les Paul. To me, it's more of a Les Paul than the modern day Les Pauls. I bought this from Fossil from the band Rehab, and then he tried to buy it back. I was like, hell no. But I love this thing. It's like a Les Paul. It's amazing. And then I've got a Harmony mandolin. You can see there's like some plumber's putty on there where I had stuck a pickup a long time ago, and I just never scraped the plumber's putty off. Now, my dad bought this a long time ago, and he was going to learn to play mandolin, and then he never followed through with it. It's just a cheap one. He gave it to me. I fell in love with playing mandolin. I played this on gigs for years, and then my mom bought me the other mandolin. But I like to keep this around. It's got a nice... It's not pretty sounding, but it's got a nice chunky sound, so sometimes I'll use this instead. I probably need to put new strings on it. And that, my friends, is all I've got from my control room. Like I said, I've got another room back there. Actually, let's just take a quick peek in there. I'll save it for another video. But just do a quick peek. It's the band rehearsal room now. There's a lot more gear in there. I just don't want to show it now because it's a freaking mess, and I got some gigs coming up, and I've got to rehearse, and then I've got my amp room in the back. But we'll do that on another video. Let's switch back to the front camera now. So that's my little studio tour. Oh, I didn't show this. Damn it. I missed two things. Hold on. I want to talk about these. So, you know, I sit here and I work all the time. Actually, go to the front camera real quick. Like, I do most of my work sitting right here. I sing sitting here. So normally I've got like another stand here. I moved it for some stuff I was working on, but I'm going to bring it back in tonight. I've normally got a boom stand here with my Neumann TLM 170 sitting right here. And then I got this for videos and streams. And then I've got this. If I need to play acoustic guitar, this sucker's ready to go. I really like this. And sometimes I'll switch this out with my Josephson mic. This is a Neumann TLM 103. This is always here ready to go. I added this. Okay, now you can show this. Let me get my light. Where'd I put my little light at? Okay, you're going to laugh at this one. I end up with all these mic stands here. This is a General Electric microphone that went with a cassette deck that my brother had in the early to mid 70s. And I found it and I hooked it up. It's just got like it's got this weird jack on it right here. So like one was for the microphone and one was like a sensor to tell the cassette deck to play. And I realized if I just stick this adapter on here and run it into a DI box, I can actually use this mic. Funny thing is, this thing sounds cool. I've got a couple mics like this. I've got one that my dad had with a reel-to-reel machine that he used in Vietnam. And I was using this on mandolin because the song I was working on, all my mics were too clean, and I wanted something more chunky, so I hooked this up, and I was like, oh, man, that sounds good. So it took me a while to figure out this rig here because it doesn't fit any mic stand. This is actually some filming equipment here. But I've been using this for some mandolin parts, and I've got some other weird mics. I'll be doing more videos with them. But I used this on some drums recently for room mics, and it was for making loops, and this was amazing. So that is the final piece of gear I was going to show from my tour there.
Casey wonders if that's a Soundcraft, says it looks like one.
What is a Soundcraft?
I'm assuming a mixer.
No, Casey, are you talking about my mixer over here? No, that's an Allen and Heath Mix Wizard. It's just like a little live board. I mainly use it for the streams. I don't really record through it. Earlier in the video, or earlier in the stream, I was talking about how, yeah, the mixer, I had done some remote sessions, and I brought mic pre's, and I just needed like maybe a couple extra mics, so I would maybe use a couple mic pre's, but I mainly use it for monitoring, and I'm running this mic through it, and then for the streams, if I'm running anything off a DAW, it goes into that mixer for the stream. Yeah, it does look like a CB radio, but I've actually got a CB radio mic in the back. I got to figure out, dude. Okay, hold on. I'm coming right back. Hold on. Coming back. All right, Casey. Damn it. Look what you started. Okay, so this is another mic I've been using. This is a Panasonic. It went with a reel-to-reel that my dad had in Vietnam, and that's a whole other thing I got to catch up on videos about. I use this a lot lately. Still works. This was made like probably around when I was born in 1928. No, I'm only kidding. I was born in 1963, so this is probably made around then. Same kind of jack. Just stick the adapter on it. Still works. I've used this on drums. I tried it on the mandolin. Wasn't as cool. But I like trying these things because, you know, you get a unique experience from it. I've also got, because well, you didn't actually ask, but I'm going to do it anyway. I've been collecting these things. I found this in a thrift store. This is a Sony something or other. I haven't really had much of a chance. It works. So I'm going to try this on something. And then I've got, what else do I have in here? Oh, I've got this. I bought this at a thrift store mainly because it looked cool. I just like it. It's actually just like it's like a Radio Shack mic. I'm sure it's terrible. Of course, it's got this weird double plug thing again. I know it works. I haven't really tried it out. I'm going to try it on something. And then I've got, oh, there it is. I've been looking for this. I've got two of these. These went with my dad's stereo when I was a kid. And I'll have to make a video about this someday. Like the first time I ever tried to do any kind of overdubbing or recording was in the 70s off my dad's stereo. And he had two of these mics. So I mic'd up, that Yamaha guitar with this. These actually sound pretty good, man. I was like kind of surprised. I mean, it ain't no Neumann, but for like cool sounds. So I've got two of these. And then I've got, okay. Now y'all gonna think this is funny. Oh, there's a lab mic in here. Son of a gun. It's not very well organized. Okay, this is a High School Musical USB microphone. At some point, I've got like a few of these like type kid microphones. I'm going to do a session where I do a whole song just using High School Musical microphones. I don't know. That's just something I'm going to try someday. And then I've got, I got some more stuff in here. And look at this. Hey, Harper, look what I found. I found a lab mic. I don't even know if it works. We were talking about a lab mic earlier, so I don't have to drag a mic. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it works. I'm going to pull it out and see if it works. There's cobwebs in here. But anyway, let me put that right there. So, I don't know. I'm just into weird gear and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, First Act. Oh, yeah, Crystal, Kit, you're talking about High School Musical. I don't know if y'all are familiar with First Act. I've got these little mini amplifiers. They're made for kids. They're called First Act. I've got 3 of them in the back. Great amplifiers. Love using them. Oh, Oh, I don't have an 8-track here. I had an 8-track. Actually, so I had an 8-track back in the 80s. It was a Fostex 1/4-inch 8-track, and it was a piece of crap. I actually took it to get repaired, and they told me the price, and I thought it was a piece of junk. I left it at the repair shop and never went back. Then I got into business with somebody else. He had like a half-inch 8-track, like a Tascam. And then I had a buddy who left a newer Tascam 8-track at my studio for years and let me use it. So that was like, Mill 3, you were asking, I'm 60? Yes, sir, I am. Actually, I'm 83, but I tell people I'm 60, so I look good for my age. You were asking about my plugins? Oh, my God. I'll have to do a whole other stream about my plugins. I've got too many. I'll show you a quick view. Let's go to the DAW view here, Harper. Yeah, I actually got a new computer recently, which is part of the reason why I hadn't been filming. God, I had to redo everything, but I'm on a M2 chip, Mac Studio M2 Max. As you can see, I've got lots of plugins. You'll notice that there's no auto-tune in here. Just thought I should mention that. Got a few reverbs. You'll see a lot of UAD stuff here. Most of this I'm not using. I mean, I guess I don't have as many plugins as some people because I had like this illegal version of Waves and I never used that stuff. So this has kind of cut it down. So, I mean, I guess this is actually small compared to a lot of people. Now that I'm looking at it, I hardly got crap on here. Funny thing is I don't actually use that many plugins. I mean, most of this stuff I don't use. I just kind of get the sound when I'm going in and then I'm done. So I don't really talk about plugins. Burl Audio sound bites. Yeah, I checked out a Burl Audio. Oh, I didn't actually show this. Hey, Harper, actually, let me just do it like this. Let's do it with this camera. I was looking at Burl. I ended up getting this instead. Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned this. I don't ever think of it as a piece of gear because I just touch it every day and use it. This is a Avocet. Is the company? Yeah. No, the company is Crane Song. It's an Avocet studio controller. These things are expensive as hell. I ended up getting a deal on this. I never would have been able to afford one new. But it's basically for like listening to different DAWs and different outputs. You got a mono check on it, and then you reverse the polarity and stuff like that. So that's what I use. I had been looking. I think Burl had one, and I was looking at that and something else, and then I ended up, this deal came across, and I got this. Yeah, people should learn to sing. Oh, let me turn this camera back up. Sorry, I'm still looking down. Oh my God, hold on. Oh, I had it all positioned right. Here we go. There we go. I like this little camera. I probably should end this stream because I need to record guitar. I'm actually thinking about taking a break and then coming back for another stream. I got to record some electric guitars, so I might be back a little later. And I got to mic up some guitar. It's not going to be an exciting video because I still got to work out the parts, so there might be just a bunch of me just screwing around trying to figure out parts. But that might happen later today. Yeah, the Burl audio is cool. I actually had done a project at Echo Mountain in Asheville, and they had a bunch of, I think it was Burl converters. They had, oh my God, they had so many converters there. Such a great studio. Are there any, oh yeah, High School Musicals, don't break it. Oh, I see, Case, you got 2 SM57s, yes. Some of the greatest mics ever. These things, can't beat them. Great old mandolin. Tell you what, these things just work. I've got like 7 of these things. You know, they all sound a little different. If you just hook them all up together and put them on one source and you listen to, like, they're close, but there's definitely a lot more variation between them. So sometimes I've got some of these mics where it's written on there, like, you know, Party Like a Rock Star, like the mic I use for the guitar part on that, or like somebody's vocals or somebody's snare drum or something like that because of that particular SM57. So I used to have like 10 of these things and I destroyed a couple. I think I'm down to like 6 or 7. So, but hey, man, you know, hey, out of curiosity, Casey, I've been kind of thinking about the whole SM58 thing because I've got a singer in here and he likes to hold the mic. And I've heard where people like give a singer a handheld mic to sing into, but then also mic them. But what? I haven't worked with an SM58 in a long time. How much difference is there between an SM58 and an SM57? Because it's basically the same mic except for the ball on it, right? Just kind of wondering, like, you know, what the difference is. I've been kind of thinking about maybe buying a 58 just for singers that like to scream. Interesting. Yeah, I've got an old one in the back, but it's like really, that was messed up when I got it. I wouldn't even use it for that. Yeah, exactly. I use a SM7 for rock sometimes, but I'm not a huge fan of the SM7 mic. I mean, it's cool, but I don't know, you know. I use 57s for guitar amps and all that stuff. Well, folks, I think I'm going to, unless there's any questions, what am I looking? I'm starting to look at the some of the comments up here because I wasn't really paying attention. I'm just like, wait, what is everybody talking about up here? Wait, y'all are talking about honey. What are you talking about honey for, man? We're supposed to be listening to me talk here. Like, what's going on? Oh, Kit, were you like talking to people about the bee? We don't have any bees right now. Are we going to get?
That's what I told them.
Oh, you did tell them? Yeah, we got to get some bees. Although we did plant apple trees and my.
Just getting started.
Huh?
Mike is just getting started in bees.
Okay. And my kiwi plants are doing good, and we planted apple trees. So anyway, thanks so much, everybody, for participating and being involved. I've committed that I'm going to go back to regular streaming. I'm going to stream every Wednesday, not for any particular reason. I just picked it mainly because I realized that when I have to stream, it forces me to get things done. And there's a couple projects like the stuff I did with Tokyo Teens and Slade where we were streaming a lot of those songs. Like I'd have a stream coming up and I'd be like, dude, we got to come up with a song. Jim would show up with some chords or Slade would show up with nothing. And it was like, let's make up something. And then I had a party a few months ago and we were listening to the songs and I realized all the best songs were ones we did on streams. I was like, oh man, I got to start streaming again so that I can get some more songs written. But I also really enjoyed doing this. So I'm going to be doing this every Wednesday, come hell or high water. And there's more videos coming out. Please remember, yes, you're going to see more often. Sorry. But please, everybody, please subscribe. I'm doing good on Instagram and TikTok's pretty good. I'm still just struggling here on YouTube. I can't get above 7,000 subscribers. I'm not really making any money. It's driving me nuts. Oh my God. I would like to get to the point where I could actually make some money. I'm monetized, but the money I make is just, it's kind of sad, and that's fine, but I would like to actually make money so I could do this more often and have more things to show. I got a couple plans for that, but hopefully this will help. But I'm determined to get the YouTube thing up and running more. So please subscribe, pass the word, and look out for my next video about my 16-track machine, and look for me next Wednesday. So, and for all the people on Twitch, I'm kind of looking back and forth between Twitch and YouTube because I'm going at the same time here. But I just like to say thanks to everybody for being involved and your support. Y'all have a good evening, and maybe check back here in a little while. I might be streaming again tonight. I haven't figured that out yet. Just depends on how much more coffee I can drink. But anyway, talk to y'all soon. Thanks for watching.